What's up guys, I'm Dean and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I've made one video already, it's a Mortal Kombat review, go check it out if you haven't already. But as a quick introductory video, I thought it would be a good idea to go through my 50 favourite movies of all time. And these aren't the best movies ever, they're just the ones that I enjoy the most for nostalgia reasons or whatever else. So the first 35 are not in any ranked order, so I'm going to be going through them alphabetically. But the top 15 are ranked from obviously 15th to the best. So let's just get started with the first 35 now. So the first movie on this list is 10 Things I Hate About You. To be honest, I love a good rom-com, and this is my favourite rom-com ever. It's maybe the best Shakespearean adaptation of all time. If you don't know, it's an adaptation of Taming of the Shrew, and I think such a Shakespearean plot works so well in this setting, and it's really been updated to a modern setting so well, because I think a lot of the time that can be done badly. Of course, Heath Ledger is also amazing in this movie, and it is so funny. I really recommend this movie if you haven't seen it already. Ad Astra is next. I know it's a really slow movie, but I think it works that way. It's really emotional, and I think there is some really powerful stuff in there. Amazing cinematography too, and it's got one of the weirdest primate scenes in modern cinema, so I think it's worth the watch just for that. Now, the first MCU movie on our list, it is not the last, and that is 2012's Avengers. This is still one of the best MCU movies, in my opinion, just because it assembles this team so well. They do such a good job of giving them all their own personality and interactions with other characters and goals, and it's a very funny movie, and the action is great, and overall, I just really love the first Avengers movie. It's what got me hooked in the MCU. The only other Avengers movie on this list is Avengers Infinity War, for a lot of the same reasons, just on a bigger scale. Avengers 1 and Avengers 3 both have amazing villains. Thanos kind of loses his edge in Endgame, I think, but in Endgame he is amazing. It has great team-ups, it brings together these worlds so well. It's just a great movie overall, and it does fan service in the best way imaginable. I really love Avengers Infinity War, I do prefer it to Endgame. Next up is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend it, because it is one of the most fun and self-indulgent movies ever, and I absolutely love it for that, because it's so clever and funny and fun and dumb at the same time, and it just works so well. The plot at times just takes a back seat for all the hijinks and the fun that these historical figures go on, and I absolutely love that about this movie. Bill and Ted is just phenomenal. Next up on this list is Black Panther. It's not the best MCU movie, but I think it is really great. It does kind of lose itself in the third act, though, because it kind of drops this emotional depth they've been working throughout the movie. But, of course, it's amazing. Killmonger is amazing. Michael B. Jordan is probably the star of this movie for me. And, of course, Chadwick Boseman is just perfect for the role of Black Panther. Next up is Darkest Hour, the Winston Churchill movie starring Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman is amazing in this, by the way. What I like about this movie is they don't show Churchill in an entirely patriotic light, and they do show him with the flaws that this man actually had, while still showing all the great things he did. And it's got an amazing train scene at the end. I do think this movie works really well. First Star Wars movie of 3 on this list, we have Empire Strikes Back. Of course, it pioneered a genre and completely changed cinema. The twist is so good. Darth Vader is so good. Yoda, I think, is an underrated part of this movie. He's an absolute highlight for me. And of course, this movie has Lando in it, which boosts it a whole bunch. First Wes Anderson movie on this list is Fantastic Mr. Fox, one of my favourite animated movies of all time. Every line of dialogue has just beautiful rhythm to it, and it's animated so well, and it feels so much like a book when you're watching it. Just every single frame of it is amazing, and it is just great. I cannot talk about how much I love this movie enough. Next up is Fight Club. It's such a good reflection on toxic masculinity, and I do really like the twist at the end. Another classic favourite movie of people what I've got next is Forrest Gump. I think the story is told in such an interesting way narratively, and Tom Hanks is phenomenal in the movie, and it's quite a nice feel-good movie as well at times. This one may be a controversial pick, but it is 2014's Godzilla. I really love this movie. I think that Gareth Edwards is an amazing director because unlike any other director we've had for American Godzilla movies, he really understands the scale of these things. People complain you can't see the fights, but he only puts cameras where people can be. I need to make a whole video about this movie, but it is just genius. It really captures the scale of Godzilla and just the horror of this mythic creature. I just love Godzilla 2014. It is by far my favourite MonsterVerse movie. The only other Wes Anderson movie on this list is The Grand Budapest Hotel. Every single frame of this movie is like a painting. It is one of the most gorgeous movies ever, and it's got the same rhythm to the dialogue that Fantastic Mr. Fox does. Great cast as well. This movie's got an amazing cast. It's great. Another MCU movie on this list is Guardians of the Galaxy. James Gunn has done maybe an even better job of assembling the team as Joss Whedon or the Russo brothers do, because we haven't seen those characters before, but by the end of the movie, we know them all, we love them all. He did such a good job of forming them and their relationships with each other, and how can I not talk about this movie without talking about the soundtrack? One of the best soundtracks in a movie of all time, in my opinion. Guardians of the Galaxy is easily one of the best MCU movies. Next up is Hacksaw Ridge, the war movie starring Andrew Garfield. I think it's a really powerful message about what this one man managed to succeed, and it's got quite a slow pace, all building up to the climax of the finale, and the finale is just perfect. I really do love Hacksaw Ridge. Next up is unironically one of my favourite superhero movies of all time, and probably my favourite Pixar movie of all time. That is The Incredibles, because every character is so perfectly defined, the world building is quick, effortless and just perfect, and just the relationships between the family, especially Bob and Helen, are amazing, and it's got a great villain as well. Syndrome really works in this movie despite his limited screen time. I just cannot talk about how much I love The Incredibles so much. It is partially due to nostalgia, I will admit that, but it's still an amazing movie, that aside. The penultimate MCU movie on this list is the one that started it all, and that is Iron Man. It's fun, it's cool, it's happy, it's funny, and it's got quite a good message to it. I think where this movie really works is Jon Favreau's and Robert Downey Jr.'s approach to the script, where they kind of used it as a loose basis and they built off of it. You can really tell when you watch the movie, and I think it works great. I, Tonya is next. If you haven't seen this movie, it is great. That's why it's on this list. Obviously, the mockumentary storytelling style is actually quite interesting, and it's used in an interesting way to tell the narrative of this, and I think they do a really good job of keeping the events of this story funny and the events of Tonya Harding's life funny, but not making light of it at all, and it's still quite shocking and like gripping as well. I really do like I, Tonya. Next up is our first Taika Waititi movie, and that is Jojo Rabbit. I really love this movie, and it really just shows you why Taika Waititi is such a great actor. Him being Hitler is just genius, it's perfect, and it's absolutely ridiculous. And this movie is so emotional as well. It is easily one of his most emotional movies for me. Great soundtrack as well, great performances all round, and a great message as well. Jojo Rabbit is great overall. Let's talk about Joker next. Joaquin Phoenix is amazing in the role. He's absolutely phenomenal, and the movie's got an amazing climax. My complaint about the movie is that it's not really about the Joker, and it didn't have to be this DC movie, but putting that aside, it's compelling, it's gripping, at times it's scary. I really do like Joker. Now on to what is probably my third favourite comic book movie of all time, and that is Logan. The perfect send-off for Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart, because both of them are absolutely just amazing in their roles. I know I keep saying people are amazing in these roles, but for Logan I really mean it, because Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart give a performance like maybe they never have before. It is so good, and the action is great, and the story is great, and James Mangold is just a great director. I can't wait to see Indiana Jones 5, but that's off on a tangent. Let's go on to the next movie. I've said it before, but Jim Carrey is probably my favourite actor ever. I probably need to make a video clarifying that down the line. But let's talk about my third favourite movie of his, and that is Man on the Moon. Andy Kaufman, the character he plays in this, a real person, is just so interesting, and the way Jim Carrey plays him is just so realistic and confusing at times, and it just really works. If you haven't seen the documentary Jim and Andy, I would really recommend it, because it showed you how far Jim Carrey went into this role. He's just great in it. I really like Man on the Moon. Okay, a movie I think I will make a video about in the future just because it is so unironically great, and that's The Muppets from 2011. It is hilarious, it is clever, it's honestly got some of the most intelligent jokes I've seen in a movie, and the music is great. It's really heartwarming and kind and thoughtful. I love The Muppets, and just this is the pinnacle of all their movies in my opinion. And the others are great anyway. I just love The Muppets and I love this movie. Next up is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the first of two Quentin Tarantino movies on this list. The slow pace and the lack of plot is quite interesting for a Quentin Tarantino movie, but I think it works so well when it meets the crescendo of this finale. And it's got a great cast as well, and of course, great cinematography. Next up is Queen and Slim, one of my least favourite movies on this list, but of course I still love it because it's in my top 50. What makes this movie work so well is just the creeping sense of dread that we get throughout the movie. If you haven't seen Queen and Slim, go check it out. True for anyone movie on this list, to be fair. Next up is Raiders of the Lost Ark, one of the most iconic movies ever made. Just so much of it is referenced all the time now, and for good reason. Harrison Ford is amazing in it, and the action is so visceral, and really great action in this movie. And it's really funny as well. Raiders of the Lost Ark, great stuff. The second Star Wars movie on this list is Rogue One. I think this also shows why Gareth Edwards, same guy as 2014's Godzilla, is great with scale when you see stuff like the Death Star. But what I love about this movie is the characters. They do such a good job defining these characters and giving them a nice send-off. I also really think this movie feels more like a Star Wars movie and captures that core essence maybe better than any movie since Return of the Jedi. I do really love Rogue One. My first movie by Edgar Wright on this list, if you can't tell, Edgar Wright is my favourite director, and Shaun of the Dead is one of his best movies. Everything about this movie is great. It's a great spoof on horror while still being quite scary at times. There's amazing shots, and like every Edgar Wright movie, it's got so many great callbacks and Easter eggs and little details that you just miss. Simon Pegg is great in it, and so is Nick Frost. Just Shaun of the Dead is so great. Shin Godzilla is my favourite Godzilla movie of all time, my favourite monster movie of all time. It is just so good. It's the first reboot of Godzilla in Japan since the first one all the way back in 1954, and I think they did the perfect job rebooting him because they really kept the core details of what makes Godzilla Godzilla, but they've thrown in enough new stuff to really make it interesting and keep you watching. And this time, instead of telling the story from like a military point of view or a civilian point of view, they told it from a political point of view, which isn't something I've really ever seen in a Godzilla movie, and I think it's a really realistic take on what the government would do in this absolutely impossible scenario. Shin Godzilla is so great. Next up is Shrek 2, unironically one of the best animated movies of all time. The action is surprisingly great and the jokes are so clever and so good. Shrek 1 is great too, but I have to give the best one to Shrek 2. Speaking of the best animated movies of all time, let's talk about Soul. I love jazz, so that definitely helps. Any movie with jazz in does get a little boost, but this movie has beautiful animation. It's got such a good message. I just really love Soul because it's so thoughtful and thought-provoking at the same time. If you haven't seen Soul, go check it out. Okay, time for the controversial one. I probably will make a video about this in the future as well, but the last Star Wars movie on this list has to be Star Wars The Last Jedi. I really love this movie. It's a perfect finale for Luke. Just so much about this movie works for me. It's beautiful. They do everything with the characters brilliantly. It's got some of the best scenes in all of Star Wars in my opinion. Just everything about this movie I love, and I will keep defending it. And the last MCU movie on this list is Thor Ragnarok, mostly thanks to Taika Waititi, who completely revitalised Thor's character. But what I do also need to mention is Jeff Goldblum. He's not in the movie much, but he definitely makes it a whole ton better. Just like he does in anything he's in, Jeff Goldblum is amazing. It's also just really hilarious, and I do like Loki's redemption in this movie, despite the fact looks like we're going back on that on a bit. Next up is Up. Everyone talks about the first 10 minutes a lot, but that is the best part of the movie. I would also like to say it's a beautiful score, and it's got such a clever plot. It's such an interesting idea that this movie is built around. Okay, so the last movie in the 35 before we get to my top 15 is X-Men Days of Future Past. One of my favourite X-Men movies. My favourite if you don't count Logan. They do such a good job with Mystique and combining the past and the future. And of course the highlight for me has to be Michael Fassbender. He is so good in this movie. And also Quicksilver. That Quicksilver scene is still great. I mean, everyone's still copying it to this day, so that shows you how good it is. Now it's time to get on to my top 15 favourite movies of all time. In 15th place is the second Jim Carrey movie on this list, and that is Eternal Sunshine on the Spotless Mind. Where this movie really stands out and shines for me is in its non-linear narrative style and how it's edited and just the cinematography of it all. It's so confusing and gripping and unnerving all at the same time. Of course, Jim Carrey is great in it as well. In a complete contrast to Eternal Sunshine on the Spotless Mind, in 14th place we have Ferris Bueller's Day Off. One of the funnest movies ever in my opinion. It's fun to have a movie that's not about an underdog for once. And of course I don't like Ferris Bueller as a character, but in this movie he is undeniably cool. In 13th place is La La Land. Yet again, like I said, I really love the jazz in this. And I think in some ways this really works as a good spoof on your classic musical. The cast, of course, is great, and the music is the real standout for me. And I'm a fan of the ending. I know lots of people will complain about it, but I do really love the ending. In 12th place is Mission Impossible Fallout, one of my favourite action movies of all time. I think the action is gripping, it is shocking at times, it's so visceral, and it feels really like you're in it. It's well directed, Henry Cavill is great, and Tom Cruise, as always, is great with the action. The plot is good as well. I know I'm talking about the action, but for me, the action is what really makes this movie shine. 11th place is Parasite. Everyone loves this movie, so I don't think I need to explain why. It's really powerful, but at the halfway point, there's just a bit where the floor drops from the movie, and that's where it really gets going for me. I really love the stuff after that. It's got a great ending and also amazing cinematography. Parasite is just amazing all round. In 10th place is the last Quentin Tarantino movie on this list, and that is Inglourious Basterds. I really love the narrative style of this, of all these interconnected characters all coming together. I think that works really well, and it has such a fascinating and interesting ending, which I don't think anybody saw coming the first time we all watched it. In 9th place is Get Out. This is another movie I really had no idea what I was getting into when I started watching it, but I really loved it. It's such good satire, but at the same time it is quite unnerving and scary, and the ending is so great. And the cast, just all of them are great. I really love Get Out. In 8th place is another Edgar Wright movie and my favourite action movie of all time, Hot Fuzz. This is all the same editing and callbacks and clever writing of the Cornetto trilogy, but just in my opinion personally, I think it does have the best action and the best jokes and the best characters. I really love Simon Pegg and Nick Frost's relationship in this movie. They kind of have like a bromance subplot, and it's just really cool because it's written like a romance subplot. Hot Fuzz is amazing. In 7th place is another movie which I think is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen, and that's Hunt for the Wilderpeople, also made by Taika Waititi. It's really heartwarming and funny, and at times it goes in directions you completely did not expect, but just what really makes this movie is just the heart of it. It is quite emotional, and Sam Neill is great in it as well, as he always is. In 6th place is 1917. I think the real star of this movie is the way it's shot all in one shot. I think that works really well, and it has some really beautiful cinematography in there, as well as one of the best scores ever. This is probably the tensest movie I've ever watched. Like, I was so tense throughout watching this in the cinema, practically on the edge of my seat the entire time, and it just does tension so well. 1917 is a great, powerful movie. On to the top 5. In 5th place, we have The Dark Knight. Heath Ledger is, of course, the standout in this movie. He's so amazing. But what really is the heart of this movie for me is Batman's and the Joker's relationship. Two-Face is great as well, and so's Rachel. There is a lot to love about this movie. The action, the characters, just it all works so well, and is my second favourite comic book movie of all time. In 4th place is Knives Out, another movie that just proves why Rian Johnson is a genius at making movies. In the first 15 minutes, this movie subverts your expectations and go in a direction you really weren't expecting. That isn't the last twist, it's twists and turns throughout. I think another highlight of this movie is, of course, the amazing star-studded cast. And just the script. The script is the real standout for me. Daniel Craig is great as well, and I kind of love the accent. In third place is the last Jim Carrey movie on this list, and that is The Truman Show. I just think Jim Carrey's amazing in this, and he's the real star for me. But what really makes this movie is the interesting premise it's built on, and this premise really leads to really cool little details that you'll notice on rewatches, as well as really, really great cinematography and camera angles and clever stuff like that. I love The Truman Show. I've got a poster for it there. Sorry, the mirror was confusing me. Just there. In second place, the best animated movie of all time, the best Marvel movie, the best superhero movie, just the second best movie of all time, in my opinion. That is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's got such an interesting animation style, with every character having their own style. I really love that about it. It's got a great soundtrack, and it's got the best unlocking power scene ever. The scene where Miles unlocks his full potential and has his new suit on might be my favourite movie in all of cinema ever. I love Into the Spider-Verse. It's just great in every way. I don't think it's going to surprise anyone at all when I say what's in first place. It is, of course, Baby Driver. Let me just scoot back a little awkwardly. What is not to love about this movie? It is so well edited, and the quick cuts and the action and just how every single step and every single minute detail is in time with the music, and how every scene is built around a song, and the soundtrack overall is great, and it's so emotional, and I just love every character in this movie, and all of them are so well performed despite some dicey cast members. Just Baby Driver, in my opinion, is the closest thing to a perfect movie that has ever existed. I could talk about it for ages, but I shan't. I need to save some of this stuff for future videos. Now I have finished talking about literally 50 movies. With that all wrapped up, I'd like to thank you all for watching. Please tell me down below in the comments which of these 50 movies is your favourite and which one is your least favourite. And please tell me what kind of videos you'd like to see from me in the future, because of course I'm still trying to figure out this YouTube thing. All my links are down in the description as well. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. That still feels weird for me to say, but just really thank you for watching this entire video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.